Hello guys, good morning everybody. Welcome to our YouTube channel. I hope my voice is I hope my voice is audible to you. Just give me a confirmation regarding that. हाँ जी. Okay. Audible. Okay. So let's begin the session for today. Right. So there is this news in front of us that PM has launched revamp of 508 Amrit Bharat stations. Now this is a very important step that has been taken by our Prime Minister. This is basically related to when I talk about the revampation, or we can say revamping the railways infrastructure projects. And overall, if I talk about, it is a part of our Amrit Bharat station scheme. Very important. If I talk about, this is a part of Amrit Bharat station scheme, under which 1300 prime railway stations would be redeveloped in our country. Very important. Under this 1300 railway stations would be done what? They would be redeveloped by our government. So this is a very important thing that has come up in this particular context, because we know that infrastructure is a very important part if we have to talk about today's economic scenario, whether it is a road infrastructure, whether it is the rail infrastructure, the ports infrastructure, or the, let's say, the aviation infrastructure. So in this particular regard, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to make sure that we have world class railway stations where we have upgraded facilities, we have internet connectivity, plus there is normal provisions that are there for the public to use, and let's say make sure that it is a very environmental friendly railway stations. So this is the thing that has been done, where it has been done in this particular scheme of Amrit Bharat station scheme, and under its first phase they are basically saying that they would be redeveloping 508 stations. Now this overall project is very important if we consider the situation of northeast in our country, right? We know that northeast has been a area which has been neglected, right? उसको बहुत ज़्यादा neglect face करना पड़ा है, काफ़ी ज़्यादा isolated रहा है, and we have seen various policies of government nowadays or in the past few years that basically talks about that earlier it was look east, right? Now they changed that particular policy from look east to act east. Very important. Now this is a very important thing that we guys have to understand, that when I talk about overall connectivity with the northeastern region. अब अगर हमारी कनेक्टिविटी नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न रीजन से होगी, तभी हम साउथ ईस्ट एशियन कंट्रीज जो हैं वहां तक हम अपना बेटर कनेक्टिविटी कर सकते हैं. एंड दे आर ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ आवर कंट्री. इफ वी टॉक अबाउट नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न लेट्स से सोसाइटी which they feels that they might be somehow have been isolated from the rest of the country. So as a result, this particular Bharat station scheme, where we are redeveloping, we are creating infrastructure, might help us in achieving that particular thing, which is what we are looking for, that is integration with the eastern part of the country as well. And that would be basically, let's say, putting us towards on the path of achieving this particular goal, that where we are saying that we have to act towards east as well. Not only for the eastern India, but for the overall infrastructure of the entire India in context of railways would be getting a bigger boost from this particular project. So this particular project is very important. You can use it in your answers as well, in the mains answer, when you have to write down certain points related to rail infrastructure, right? What are the things that have been done to improve the rail infrastructure? Then I think these points are of ultimate importance for us, that there have been redevelopment of Amrit Bharat stations. I hope this point is clear to everybody. आशु शर्मा, लुक ईस्ट और एक्ट ईस्ट में क्या फर्क है? लुक ईस्ट है कि हम देख रहे हैं कि हाँ भाई हम तुम्हें काम करेंगे, ये पहले पॉलिसी होती थी, पर जैसे ही नरेंद्र मोदी गवर्नमेंट आती है वो इसको चेंज कर देती है 2014 में कि नहीं, हमें एक्ट ईस्ट करना है, हमें पॉलिसीज ऐसी बनानी है और मेक श्योर करना है कि हम उनको इंटीग्रेट करें विद द रेस्ट ऑफ द कंट्री. ओके, मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट. सो देयर इज नथिंग इंपॉर्टेंट ओवर हियर. डायरेक्टली मूविंग टू द एडिटोरियल पेज. नाउ this is related to restoring Rahul Gandhi's membership. Again a political article, right? So we will not be going into this, right? Political article. Now this is related to the violence that we have just witnessed in the state of Haryana, right? And the violence we have been witnessing in the state of Manipur as well. So but this particularly is related to the violence that has been there in the state of Haryana. So it is quite a, let's say, communal article that talks about various discrimination that has now crept up in our society on the basis of Hindus and Muslims, that the communalism that is being spread through various wings, right? So I think we need not to go into the details of this particular editorial. Okay. Now this is again related to Manipur, right? They are saying that every act of silence amplifies the horrors in Manipur. Again, this is, we can say, a political article, because this is basically talking about that majorly any action has not been taken, or any major action has not been taken in order to improve the situation in Manipur, given the way that we have seen the incidents of the reports of the videos that have come up, how violence has been perpetrated against certain, let's say, communities living in the state of Manipur. Again, the things are repeated again and again, and we have already discussed these particular parts. Now this is related to Indian chess, particularly a sports article, so we can mention, or we can say, basically skip this particular editorial. परविंदर सिंह, अगर हम बात करें यहाँ पे, बेसिकली दिस इज अ पर्टिकुलर एरिया वेयर दे वर ट्राइंग टू मूव थ्रू. इट इज अ मुस्लिम डोमिनेटेड एरिया. The problem was the procession that was going through was of a Hindu procession that was basically going through the streets of this particular area of Nu, but this area was dominated by Muslims. And there was one, basically अगर हम बात करें, there was one accusation that there might be a member in that procession, in Hindu procession, that he was alleged of something that he had done bad to the Muslim, let's say, the communities in Rajasthan. So as a result, there was a particular, we can say, there was apprehension among the Muslims that there might be that particular person who had conducted those violence against the women in Rajasthan might be in that particular procession. As a result, stone pelting started, and this particularly resulted in the huge violence that we have witnessed in the state of Haryana, right? सी, अगर हम यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की बात करें, अभी तो ओपिनियन मांगे गए हैं, हम कह नहीं सकते कि कम्युनलिज्म को ये कम करेगा या बढ़ाएगा, ये तो डिपेंड करता है आने वाले फ्यूचर में इसका क्या होगा, राइट? बट अगर हम बात करें, यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड को इंडिया में इंप्लीमेंट करना बड़ा ही मुश्किल है, बिकॉज ऑफ द वैरायटी ऑफ द डाइवर्सिटी दैट वी हैव सीन, बिकॉज देयर आर डिफरेंट लॉज इन रिलेशन टू डिफरेंट थिंग्स लाइक सक्सेशन की बात करें, मैरिज की बात करें, डाइवोर्स की बात करें, इतने सारे डिफरेंट सिविल लॉज हैं, बड़ा मुश्किल है सबके लिए वन साइज फिट ऑल अप्रोच को यूज करना. माइट बी इन द फ्यूचर कि जब हमारे बीच में ये बंदिशें कम हो जाएं, तब हम जाके आने वाले टाइम में कर सकते हैं, बट राइट नाउ I don't think that it would be a feasible thing that a uniform civil code is implemented across the India, when already there is a lot of polarization that is happening on the religious grounds. That might create more of a polarization, right? So it is not, I think, according to me, the good time to implement uniform civil code, right? Okay, now moving to the next part. Now this article is very important. Let us try to discuss this particular article. The bureaucracy as prosecutor and judge, very important. The controversial Jan Vishwas Act 2022 was recently enacted into law by Parliament that has been aimed by the government that it would help in improving ease of doing business, and it will decriminalize certain compoundable offences across 42 legislations. Now let's try to discuss this particular act in detail. What is this Jan Vishwas Act and how basically this article talks about that bureaucracy is acting as a prosecutor and a judge. Now let's try to discuss it. First of all, let's say this Jan Vishwas Act is giving more powers to the bureaucracy. Is giving more powers to the bureaucracy. First of all, government's intention is to improve ease of doing business in the country. Now we have seen a lot of cases that gets pending in the courts because of various, that let's say कि काफी ज्यादा हमने देखा है कि बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम्स आ जाती है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स के बीच में, प्राइवेट एंटिटीज के बीच में, गवर्नमेंट्स के बीच में, जिसकी वजह से मैटर्स क्या है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट या हाई कोर्ट या लोकल कोर्ट्स के अंदर पेंडिंग हो जाते हैं, जिसकी वजह से बहुत सारा बैकलॉग क्रिएट हो जाता है. और इसकी वजह से, क्योंकि ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स टाइम पे इन्फोर्स नहीं हो पा रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से हमारे देश में ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस में प्रॉब्लम रहती है. सो इट इज ओपिनियन ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट दैट व्हाई कांट अ ब्यूरोक्रेसी बी गिवन द पावर दैट इंस्टेड ऑफ दीज मैटर्स गोइंग टू द जुडिशरी, these matters could come to the bureaucrats or the tribunals. So as a result, in this particular context, this Jan Vishwas Act, the government's intention is, which they have touted, is that their purpose is to improve the ease of doing business. Kaise? I will give an example. This particular act will amend, it will amend Environment Protection Act 1986 and Air Pollution Act or Air Pollution Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. How? Now, I think you might be knowing this particular thing, that in a particular act there are certain instances when a particular act is violated. Let's say you could be imprisoned or you could be fined as well. Now, to make it understand that we want to enforce contracts and we want to make sure that there is ease of doing business. So what could be the best thing that government can do in context of this? उन्होंने क्या कर दिया, कुछ जो offenses है, compoundable offenses हैं, उनको उन्होंने decriminalize कर दिया. What they have done? They have decriminalized those offenses. मतलब क्या है कि पहले अगर मान लीजिए यहां पे इन offenses के लिए punishment थी, earlier if there was punishment for compoundable offenses, now what is there? There is now provision that it would be supplemented with the fines. Now this is the thing that has happened through this Jan Vishwas Act. That is why this whole problem that has been being labeled by this particular article, that now bureaucracy is the prosecutor as well as the judge. Now let's try to understand that if we talk about in our country, slowly and slowly we have seen that the government has given the powers to the bureaucracy in order to make sure that they are resulting or they are acting as both prosecutor as well as judge. Judge से अगर हम बात करें तो basically उनके पास judicial powers बहुत ज़्यादा आ रही हैं. Let's try to understand how this is all happening. First of all, if we talk about first instances, we can put in under the heading like cases where bureaucracy is acting as a judge. Now let's consider these scenarios. पहला सिनारियो हम कह सकते हैं मिनिस्ट्रीज, अगर हम कुछ मिनिस्ट्रीज की बात करें, दे हैव नाउ क्रिएटेड सेपरेट ट्रिब्यूनल्स. ये चीज तो हम डिनाई नहीं कर सकते हैं कि काफी सारे सेपरेट ट्रिब्यूनल्स बनाए गए हैं. और क्यों बनाए गए हैं? बेसिकली वहां पे पावर किसको दी जा रही है? ब्यूरोक्रेसी को दी जा रही है. बर्डन कम करने के लिए जुडिशरी के ऊपर पावर किसको दी जा रही है? ब्यूरोक्रेसी को दी जा रही है. सो दिस इज वन ऑफ द इंस्टेंस. Second instance, we can say formation of, let's say, Competition Commission of India. There we are giving more powers to whom? Bureaucracy को ही दे रहे हैं. किसको powers provide कर रहे हैं? Bureaucracy को. The third thing we can say, there are lot of acts like, one of the act like Prevention of Money Laundering Act, where we are making sure कि bureaucracy backdoor से entry कर रही है in this particular judicial process. So these are the instances that have been highlighted if we talk about the overall situation, that cases where bureaucracy is acting on, let's say, as a judge. क्योंकि bureaucracy होगी जो prosecute करेगी, भाई हाँ तुम्हारी ये गलती है, तुमने ये किया है. पहले इल्जाम भी वो खुद लगा रहे हैं, फिर खुद ही ट्रिब्यूनल्स में बैठ रहे हैं, खुद ही कॉम्पिटिशन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया में बैठ रहे हैं और खुद ही PMLA एक्ट के थ्रू एंटर कर रहे हैं. बट जबकि हमारा आर्टिकल 50 कहता है दैट देयर शैल बी सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स. ये चीज तो हमें पता ही है कि सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स होनी चाहिए. और अगर हम बात करें स्पेसिफिकली किसकी बात करता है वो? जुडिशरी और एग्जीक्यूटिव की, दैट देयर शैल बी सेपरेशन ऑफ जुडिशरी फ्रॉम एग्जीक्यूटिव. दैट इज आर व्हाट वी कैन से अ पार्ट ऑफ आर डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी. So this is the thing that needs to be enforced by the Supreme Court as well as by the government itself, because separation of powers is very much necessary if we want to maintain the status quo, if we want to make sure that both are in their, let's say, acting responsibility and their powers are kept in check. But जो instances अब देखने को मिल रहे हैं like from Jan Vishwas Act, where what is being happening in these particular scenario, somehow it gives us or pointers to this particular thing कि जो bureaucracy है वो दोनों act कर रही है, prosecutor और judge भी. और ये जो कुछ instances हैं जहां पे हम कह सकते हैं कि हाँ it is acting as a both prosecutor as well as a judge. हाँ जी, I hope this point is clear to everybody. Okay, चलिए. Right, give me a confirmation, then I will be moving to the next editorial. Now, this is a very, very interesting article that is related to Is India's sugar surplus leading to a crisis? Very important article that we need to discuss. क्या इंडिया का जो शुगर सरप्लस है क्या वो हमें क्राइसिस की तरफ लेकर जा रहा है? Now let's try to understand this situation and try to have a better framework in your mind. Okay. Now, when I talk about sugar production in the country, right? Let's try to understand some of the things. First question that they have asked in this particular editorial is why there is surplus. कि भाई इतना सरप्लस क्यों देखने को मिल रहा है? क्या रीजन क्या है कि भाई ऐसा सरप्लस क्यों देखने को मिल रहा है? क्यों लोग इतना ज्यादा प्रोडक्शन कर रहे हैं? अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं शुगर केन की. नाउ फर्स्ट रीजन दैट हैज बीन गिवन इज दैट सेंटर ऑफर्स फेयर एंड रेम्यूनरेटिव प्राइसेस regime फॉर शुगर केन. जैसे कि एमएसपी अनाउंस करी जाती है राइस एंड व्हीट के लिए, सिमिलरली एफआरपी अनाउंस करी जाती है फॉर द शुगर केन. सो दैट इज बेसिकली अ बिग इंसेंटिव टू ग्रो मोर एंड मोर शुगर केन बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट इज सेइंग whatever be the prices in the future, whether they fall or whether they increase, the government has already made sure that they would be giving this particular prices, that is fair and remunerative price. Second thing is states also offer heavy incentives in order to boost the production of sugarcane. This is a second point that is very, very important to understand. The third thing you need to understand is that now the government has set up a target of ethanol blending, that is 20% by 2025. This is ethanol blending, and it is basically on the part of the sugarcane mill owners that they have to make sure that they are creating ethanol from sugarcane. So this is a part of our ethanol blending program, also called as bioethanol, where we mix petrol with ethanol, right? So there is a demand for ethanol. So as a result, sugarcane is produced in greater numbers. So these are the reasons that we can say is reasons for the surplus production that we are witnessing in our country right now. First of all, the center offers FRP for sugarcane. Second, states also offer heavy incentives in order to boost the production. And third thing is there is demand for ethanol. Why? Because government wants to make sure that it is basically going towards less emissions, because government has certain goals to achieve, like net zero emission goal by 2070. So in that particular context, our government has to make sure that they are basically resulting in more and more ethanol. So ethanol बनेगी कहां से? ethanol बनेगी sugarcane से. So as a result, this is one of the instance. अब क्वेश्चन है हमारे सामने कि सरप्लस इतना ज्यादा हो रहा है. बिल्कुल ठीक बात है. ज्यादा सरप्लस अगर हम बात करें कहां पे डाइवर्ट हो रहा है? ज्यादा से ज्यादा सरप्लस अगर हम बात करें डाइवर्ट हो रहा है इस इथेनॉल की प्रोडक्शन के लिए. सो आई कैन से वन थिंग, दिस मेजर ethanol is being diverted towards ethanol production, diverted for ethanol production, that is sugarcane. Now question is that is there in front of us कि ये जो इतना हम शुगर केन की प्रोडक्शन कर रहे हैं इसका इन्वायरमेंट के ऊपर क्या इंपैक्ट पड़ रहा है? क्या इसके ऊपर रिसोर्सेज के ऊपर कोई इंपैक्ट पड़ रहा है? यस, इसका बहुत ज्यादा इंपैक्ट पड़ रहा है हमारे ग्राउंड वाटर टेबल के ऊपर. Why? Because sugarcane as a crop demands more and more of water, right? It's required certain amount of rainfall, but उस एरिया में इतनी रेनफॉल तो नहीं आ पाती जो हमारे ट्रेडिशनल sugarcane growing areas है. So as a result, people or the farmers have to depend on irrigation. But the irrigation that they are practicing are not the smart irrigation practices that are required at this day and age, because they are, let's say, involved in irrigation in the practice, like they are using it through traditional hand pumps, but they are not, let's say, moving it to the parts of, we can say, micro irrigation, which are drip irrigation and sprinkler irrigation. So one thing we can say, this extra sugar production is creating a stress on water resources. ये किसके ऊपर स्ट्रेस क्रिएट कर रहा है? ये वाटर रिसोर्सेज के ऊपर क्रिएट कर रहा है जो स्टेट के अंदर अवेलेबल है. क्योंकि इतना ज्यादा स्ट्रेस हो रहा है इन वाटर रिसोर्सेज के ऊपर, दैट इज लीडिंग टू, लेट्स से, अंडरग्राउंड वाटर लेवल going down water table or table level going down. So as a result, we need to make sure that we are involved in certain good practices where we are trying to make sure that this thing doesn't happen in context of sugarcane. So how we can make that happen? We can make that happen or solve this particular problem by going towards micro irrigation. By going towards micro irrigation. So this is one of the reasons, or this is one of the solutions we can say has been given by the editorial, that this is the thing that the farmers need to go towards it if they are going for the extra sugar production. एक्स्ट्रा शुगर प्रोडक्शन हो रही है क्योंकि सेंटर और स्टेट्स ऑफर कर रहे हैं इंसेंटिव्स. कैसे उसको बचाया जा सकता है? डाइवर्ट कर दो किसके लिए? इथेनॉल के लिए, बिकॉज इथेनॉल का टारगेट है 20% बाय 2025. अर्लियर इट वाज 10% बट नाउ इट इज 20% बाय 2025. तो एक जगह तो वहां पे डाइवर्ट हो जाएगी. सेकंड थिंग दैट दे वांट टू से इज दे वांट टू मेक श्योर दैट it doesn't have an impact on the groundwater resources, which is already we are feeling the heat that is basically resulting to this particular extra sugarcane production. So how can we control it? We can control it by going towards micro irrigation like drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation. I hope this point is clear to everybody. हाँ जी, यहां तक सबको क्लियर है? ओके ओके अच्छा, एफआरपी कौन डिसाइड करता है? ये कैबिनेट कमेटी करती है. चलिए, मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट. ओके, यहां पे कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, सीधा आगे चलते हैं. G20 नेगोशिएटर्स फेस क्लाइमेट चेंज हर्डल. I think everyone is aware of this particular thing, that G20 meetings were held related to energy transition, related to climate change, but they haven't been able to make a common particular draft related to their final discussions that they have decided upon, that what would be the future course of action in respect of climate change, because there are a lot of issues that are still pending between the developed and the developing countries in this G20 framework, because some are of the opinion that we need to phase out the coal, some are of the opinion that we have to phase down the coal. Second problem is related to climate finance. Some are saying that we need climate finance now more in amounts, and that too the promise that was being given in Paris agreement. So there are a lot of issues that have been highlighted at these various meetings of G20 in context of climate change. As a result, these hurdles are basically resulting in not, let's say, coming to a particular decision or the declaration related to climate change. हाँ जी, यहां तक सबको क्लियर है? ओके, मूविंग टू द नेक्स्ट पार्ट. अच्छा, यहां पे कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है. अब ये चीज बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट है, ध्यान से देखना, बड़ा ही इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है ये. नाउ लेट्स ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड. एमपी स्ट्रेटेजी फॉर टाइगर्स कैन हेल्प चीतास टू. नाउ हियर इज अ डिबेट रिलेटेड टू cheetahs that have been brought from Namibia and South Africa. What we are witnessing right now is there is a lot of problem that has happened in the context of cheetahs, because the cheetahs have been dying. One of the theories or one of the express concerns that has been raised is that there is less population of prey in the Kuno National Park. यार, प्रे की कमी है. अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं कुनो नेशनल पार्क के ऊपर, अगर हम चीतल या स्पॉटेड डियर की बात करते हैं, वहां पे उसकी कमी है. तो कैसे हम ये मेक श्योर करें कि चीतास को रिवाइव कर सके कुनो नेशनल पार्क के अंदर? नाउ दे आर बेसिकली हाईलाइटिंग द सक्सेस स्टोरी ऑफ टाइगर कंजर्वेशन इन मध्य प्रदेश. If we say there are almost around 6 tiger reserves in Madhya Pradesh, highest number of population तो नहीं है इन टाइगर रिजर्व्स में टाइगर की, बट सबसे ज्यादा टाइगर रिजर्व्स हैं कहां पे? मध्य प्रदेश में. Now they had followed a certain policy that has basically resulted in the great success story of the conservation of tigers in these tiger reserves. Now what is the thing that they are trying to say? Let's try to discuss. The state's plan of actively moving the tigers and their prey within the state to balance between predator and prey population is a key indicator to success, say experts. This strategy may help form a viable cheetah population in the national park in the state that has already seen the death of the 6 animals. Now what are the points that they are trying to mention? Try to understand it very carefully. They want to make sure that there is a balance between the population of predator and prey. Now what they are trying to say is there are 3 types of things that could be done. First of all, they are talking about incentivized voluntary village relocations, prey supplementation, and reintroduction of species such as Barasingha to new habitats in order to make sure that we are basically helping cheetahs survive in this particular condition. पहली चीज क्या बोल रहे हैं कि अगर कोई विलेज रीलोकेट हो सकती है, उनको इंसेंटिवाइज किया जाए, क्योंकि हमने देखा रिटेलिएटरी किलिंग्स काफी सारी होती हैं. दूसरी चीज जो बात करी गई है, दैट इज यू नीड टू सप्लीमेंट द प्रे, राइट. आपको उनको क्या करना पड़ेगा, सप्लीमेंट करना पड़ेगा. प्रे सप्लीमेंटेशन हैज टू हैपन. एंड थर्ड थिंग कुड बी you can reintroduce a species that could be a prey species into the Kuno National Park that could become a diet for the cheetahs. So this type of policy measures are needed right now if we want to make sure that we want to have a viable population of cheetahs. Very important. So this is the important thing that needs to be done, because cheetahs have been brought with a huge, let's say, glory, with huge vigor, with huge pride, and we cannot result that pride go into dust. We have to make sure that we are protecting the population of cheetahs. If it could be done in the case of tigers, why cannot be it done in the case of cheetahs as well? So these are the things that you have to understand: reintroduction of species, prey supplementation, and third is incentivized village relocations. I hope this point is clear to everybody. Okay. Moving to the next part. Now 5% of birds in India are endemic. These are being said by Zoological Survey of India. Now these endemic birds that have been found are in the region of Western Ghats. You have to understand one thing, that it is one of the most biodiverse hotspot regions that we have, and it is where we can see most of the species that are specifically found in only the Western Ghat area. Okay. And I think that's it for today, right? Chaliye. So these are all the, we can say, world affairs news that we have. कोई ऐसा important नहीं है कि अभी हमें इसे डिस्कस करना चाहिए. चलिए. So before I give you, let's say, leave the session, then I would be telling you that today we're gonna start our philosophy optional, 7th of August. Those who haven't decided, haven't taken the optional yet, and are very much interested to have realized their dream to become a UPSC IAS officer, then I would say, from my perspective, that you need to watch this particular induction classes. You can send in your queries to our registered mobile numbers that have been given in the, let's say, description, and you can register yourself for the today's free induction classes, right? So the philosophy's induction classes would be free for 3 days. You can register yourself and make sure that you would be, and I am telling you that you would be enjoying the sessions, and it's gonna be a whole different altogether story in the case of philosophy optional. That's gonna start from today, 7th of August, from 2:30 p.m. Those who are interested can send in their links as well. Share your numbers, right? And they will be given the links for the required session, right? And I'm telling you, it is one of the optionals that can create a lot of difference. As in this year, there was the highest marks that were achieved in optional, philosophy optional, 319 marks. Ranked 20th had 319 marks in context of philosophy, right? Okay. मेरे ख्याल से तो कोई नहीं होगा, फर्क नहीं होगा फकीरेश, मेरे ख्याल से फर्क नहीं होगा. डीमैट अकाउंट है जिसके थ्रू हम ट्रेडिंग करते हैं, राइट? दैट इज वेरी मच रिक्वायर्ड राइट नाउ दीज डेज. ओके, हाँ जी, किसी का कोई डाउट? ओके, थैंक यू सो मच, टेक केयर एंड बाय बाय.